Welcome to the marketing trench. So this is what happened, and I feel like I need to disclaim right at the start of the episode. Ricardo gave his camera about five old fashions, and it's not doing well. So we're just gonna muddle through. Fortunately, Ricardo's only at 4 himself, so this should go really well.
Amazing.
Today, we are excited to welcome Jeff Bernheisel. He is a real estate agent up in the Portland area, but before he was a real estate agent, he coached real estate agents on how to sell homes. And, one of the things that I regularly hear from real estate agents who think about maybe getting a marketing coach is, well, how many homes has that coach sold, right? And I'm sure, Jeff, you heard that lots. And so he's like, all right, well, I'm going to take my own advice. So today's conversation, which I'm really looking forward to, is what happened to Jeff when he took his own. So
high level, looking for a new job.
Zero homes sold. So Jeff, before we dive in too much, can you give us a little bit of your background, how you got into the industry, and let's start there.
Yeah. So I got into the industry originally as a loan officer right out of college, just because, that's what you do when you go to college and you spend $60,000 and you get all these different degrees, then you go become a lender, right? So kind of did that for a few years, got right about the time the big market crash. And I was lucky that I got out a little bit before that and started working for a title and escrow company as their marketing rep. And really to differentiate myself, I started using some of the tech tools. And at the time it was literally blogging was like the new big thing, and email marketing. And so I dove headfirst into email marketing, blogging. And then that led me to meet Joel Burslem. I don't know if you know him. At the time he was working with Inman News. So I connected with him. He was here in Portland as well. That led me to getting a job with Inman. So, I got to travel the country and meet agents all over doing that. And I ran all of their marketing, all of their email campaigns. Eventually I worked for 1000 Watt, did a lot of website SEO consulting and some of that stuff with those guys. And then I got back into the title and escrow industry for the last 8 years, I think it's been. And for the last 6 years specifically, my job was literally to travel the country, meet with some of our top clients, and like you said, help them get better, help them get more efficient, help them sell more homes. And I don't like to say that I didn't necessarily coach them on selling more homes. I coached them on efficiencies in marketing and some of the platforms like Facebook ads and those things, to promote themselves to help sell more homes. Because like you said, I as a coach especially, and that's exactly the way I always felt, like I've never sold a home in my life. What gives me the right to give you advice on how to go do that, right? And I know there's people that do, there's a ton of people that do. But that's always been in the back of my mind. It's like, hey, you're all going to have your own styles of doing things. I'm going to teach you how to use some of the platforms to get more visibility for your homes, or to get more visibility for your own brand or yourself, so that you can go do what you do. And that was kind of the method that I used. And at the last company that I worked for, WFG National Title in West, I built a platform out called the Modern Day Agent. And really what it was a way for me to sit down with one of our clients and ask them a bunch of questions about their business, look for inefficiencies and look for pain points, and then solve those pain points that would then allow them to go do more, be more, save more money, whatever it may be. So that was kind of the nutshell. And then this last year when COVID hit, I wasn't able to travel. Meetings were blown out the window. So I was doing 10, 15 Zoom calls a day. And I just got to the point where I was like, this sucks. Not what I want to do with the rest of my life. But I was having some of the best months I've ever had as far as, generating revenue and all of that. And so kind of sat around not doing much of anything for a few months, just stacking money, because I wasn't spending money, wasn't going out for drinks and going out for dinners and doing all that. And so I got enough money in the bank where I was like, man, if there was ever a time to take my own advice, where if I'm a brand new agent, I know I need, minimum of 6 months of income set aside. So I was like, man, maybe I should just go do this for myself. I'm going to make that happen. And so I did. And then, I joined a team, I joined another team, and really it was actually August 1st when I got my license. And I really don't count the first probably 4 or 5 months, because the first 2 teams that I was on, they just weren't a good fit. And it took me a little while of kind of floundering back and forth to figure out, what that was going to be. And then April of this year, I joined the team I'm on now, and the company EXP. specifically. And then I hit the ground running. Like everything started clicking, and I was like, oh shit, this is how it's supposed to be, I think. So
yeah.
So I'd love to stop here for a second, because we've kind of talked about this a lot, about people coming into the industry. I'm really curious to hear, kind of, because I personally think joining a team as a brand new green agent is 100% the way to go. Go in there, find a mentor, work underneath them, learn their processes and systems, learn the ropes, learn the rules so you can break them, right?
Mm-hmm.
What was that process like for you? What were you looking for when you joined those teams? And at what point did you recognize that this might not be a fit for me?
So the first part of that question, what I was looking for was, what I thought at least was, I wanted to be on a team that had just what you said, the mentorship aspect, because I'm like, look, I've got the marketing stuff down in my mind, at least. I think I can go generate leads. I think I can close the deals, but I need the mentorship on the side of, the daily what to do's, the paperwork stuff for sure. Stuff that as a brand new agent, I've never done before. And as a coach, I've never taught somebody how to write up a contract and to do the purchase and sale.
What happens after what you're great at works, right?
Yeah, then it's like, oh, now what do I do? The beauty of it was, especially here in Portland, like I ended up going on some of my own clients. I reached out to several of my own clients that I knew had the systems in place that I had helped them set up. And so I reached out to them and just said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? And they were all like, oh my God, this would be amazing. But really what it came down to was the first couple teams, and I don't want to sound like I'm talking about them in a bad light, but what they promised me and what they said they could do and what they wanted to do was just different than once I got there. It was different than what I saw ending up happening. And really what that was, it was like, all right, we got Jeff on the team now. Oh, he can help us with this and he can help us with that. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be, I'm not that guy anymore. I don't get paid to do that. I want to go sell houses. And so, after the first month, I was with a team on Keller Williams doing a lot of cold calling and that kind of stuff. And that's just not how I wanted to run my business. But I was willing to put in the work because I know it works. And so, I put my head down and did it for a few months, and, I didn't enjoy it at all. It wasn't my style. So I started looking for another team. And to your point originally, like being a brand new agent, I mean, I could have done it on my own, but I would have struggled. I needed that accountability, and I needed somebody to be like, here's what you should do. Like step 1, go do this. Step 2, this. So it was good to kind of get that under my belt for a little bit. But the biggest thing I can say for a new agent is getting on a team and getting not only the culture that you want to fit your business in the future, but just the style of business. So like me, I do not enjoy making cold calls or even lukewarm calls. I don't want to do that, And so for me to join a team where like every morning we got up and practice our sales scripts and then hop on the phone for 2.5 hours, like
from 7 to 1.
Yeah, I was like, this sucks.
Oh man.
So then the next team I got on, it was a little different. They promised me some other stuff. They're like, hey, we'll get you some leads. We're never going to do cold calling. We'll handle all of the marketing. We'll handle the transaction coordination, all of the stuff so that you can just go do what you do. But really on that team, what it came down to was nobody on the team did anything in my realm of marketing. And so I didn't have anybody that I could even talk to about stuff. So it's important to get on a team with people that are at your level, if you will, whether you're brand new or.
It's like you were in a silo working on your own all over again.
Yeah. And I mean, I closed my first couple transactions on that team, and I kind of looked at, and I had done the math in the beginning as far as the splits and what they were paying for and what I was going to pay for and all that. But after I closed my first couple transactions, I was like, this doesn't make any sense for them to take 50%, and they're not doing some of the stuff that they said they were going to do. The transaction coordinator quit in the middle of my transition. And so it was a good way for me to learn all the paperwork stuff, because I was like, well, I guess I'll figure that out.
Learn by fire. Yeah.
But really, and going on to this team that I'm on now, really what it came down to was, again, I did the math, and I was like, man, in my mind, I was like, I just lost like $9,000 for nothing. Like they didn't, one of my first listings, like we didn't even put a damn sign up. I took pictures with my phone, which I don't generally recommend, but it was one of those circumstances that I needed to. And, I had 0 expenses on the company side, 0 expenses on my side. It sold within a day. and they took 50%. And I'm like, well, it doesn't make sense to me. So started talking with another buddy. He told me, and he didn't just tell me. That was the difference. I think he showed me some of the stuff that our team is working on. And I was like, ooh, I know I'll be, at least I'll be able to walk into the office and say, hey, this is what I did today. And somebody will be like, oh, that's cool. And like, they'll understand what I'm talking about, because the previous couple teams didn't. Like if I said I was, running Facebook ads and doing this and this and this and targeting these people, they would be like, oh, that sounds cool.
I just improved conversion by 10% by changing my headline. Oh, okay, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, so having somebody around you that speaks your language is a huge deal to me.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you, it's interesting to me that it sounds like you went a little bit more of a traditional route. Like starting out at KW is a smart move for a lot of brand new agents, because they're renowned for their training programs. And so you kind of did that, even though you had spent a lot of time talking people through marketing channels like Facebook that you knew would be effective. Like you wanted to learn the traditional way of doing it. It sounds like, is that a fair kind of summary? You just
a little bit in the sense of, again, with the mentorship, the paperwork, and the transactional side of things, for sure. The main reason I chose that specific team at Keller was for the team leader. He's a buddy of mine, still is. And they had systems in place where they're just cranking out leads. He's got 5 or 6 people on his team that, every morning they're getting all their new leads and they're doing the phone. And I knew they were doing the cold calls, and I knew they were doing that. And I was like, hey, that's an aspect that I can add on to my skill set. I've in the mortgage business, I did a crap ton of phone calls back in the day like that. So I was like, yeah, I can handle it. I know I'm not going to enjoy it, but that'll at least get me going while I get the rest of my stuff going. And when I say the rest of my stuff, the Facebook ads, the lead generation coming in and all that, like that takes time. But really what it came down to was every day I was getting up and just hating real estate. Another 200 phone calls today, and like people are yelling and screaming at me. And like really, there was one day specifically where a lady, I had called a lady, and apparently she had gotten some marketing stuff from Keller before I called her. And she just went off on me, and she called me every dirty name in the book, threatening to sue the company and sue me. And I mean, I'm pretty thick skinned, if you know me. And like this lady, she hurt me. And this is the messed up part. Like she did this over the phone, and I was just like, at one point I had to stop her. I was like, look, lady, like, I'm sorry. My bad.
I am not the company.
So, and after when you're supposed to be making your 200 phone calls or whatever, you have one of those calls, like it just deflates you. And so I was like, you know what, I'm done. I'm going to go have lunch. I'm going to go have a drink, go have lunch, and like just go for a bit. Like, oh my God, it was that bad. Seriously. So while I'm having lunch with a buddy, I start getting text messages, and it's kind of the same stuff where it's like, don't ever call me again and this and that. And I didn't recognize the phone number. It was a different phone number than I was using, like an auto dialer thing. And so I was like, I'm sorry, who is this? And she's like, if you don't recognize the phone number, then you're an idiot. And it was the same lady. And it was like
it was the same lady.
3 hours later, she came back around for like round 2 to chew me out via text message.
Wow.
And that was the day where I was like, man, I can't do this shit anymore. Like, I'm done with the cold calling.
He's committed.
Yeah, she was brutal. And that was the day. Like I said, I was like, I'm over this cold calling stuff. I can't do it. This environment's not for me. And not to say the Keller Williams way, like they're doing their thing and it's working for some people. And, my buddy's doing just fine with his team, but that wasn't what I wanted to do and how I wanted to run my business.
There's no one right way to do it.
Text your rage to Jeff at what's your
It was rough.
That's important, Ricardo. There is no one way to do it. And Jeff has a different skill set. And Jeff, you already knew your skill set was generating opportunities to have conversations about real estate. You wanted to make sure that there was somebody there to make sure that your conversations about real estate were accurate. And like fill out the contract, make sure the disclosures and the addendums and all this kind of stuff. You didn't want to be the guy that the other agent was like, who is this rookie? Right.
Well,
so you were looking for a safety net.
The very first listing appointment I went on, I had never I hadn't even watched a training video on how to do a listing contract. But my team leader was just like, you'll figure it out. He's like, just go get it. He's like, go get it first, and then we'll deal with the contract. And he's like, lean on your transaction coordinator.
Dustin's face.
The one that quit.
I'm like,
Lean on your transaction coordinator.
so I get there, everything's great. The guy's like, all right, what do we do now? And I'm like, well, I'm going to call my transaction coordinator and I'm going to have her do up the paperwork for us and she'll send it out and everything will be fine. And he was like, okay, sounds good. And then like I leave and literally 20 minutes later, he calls me and he's like, hey man, you know what? I talked to one of my buddies who's in real estate. Like, I'm going to go ahead with him. And I was like,
no,
like, oh, fair enough, man. And I said, well, hey, you know what? Just for my own feedback and my own ego, like what happened between when I left 20 minutes ago and just now? And he's like, honestly, man, I could tell you have no idea what you're doing. I'm like, yeah, fair enough. So I went back and I told the team at that point, I was like, hey, I don't ever want that to happen again. Like that cannot happen to me. So then I kind of took it upon myself. And I think this is the difference between a lot of us is like, I felt I don't ever want that to happen. So I went and I printed out all of the contracts that I needed to. I read through all of them line by line, tried to figure it out, what they all meant. And then I watched some of the training videos that Keller Williams had online in their system and went through that process. And then with a buddy of mine, I sat down and we just kind of did like a role play of like, this is what it's going to be like at the kitchen table when I'm getting somebody to sign this contract. And I did that a few times with a few different friends. And now, now I can do it blindfolded, half drunk and
Which, by the way,
not saying that he does, but just saying he could. Well, good on you. Good on you for doing it anyhow, knowing that you were butt naked, had no idea what you were doing, just going out there, completely putting yourself on the line with no safety net and doing it anyhow. I mean,
that guy, I see the comment that says that mentor is horrible. Like, I'm probably making it sound way worse, but like I'm pulling it down. Like that is, at the end of the day, he was like, I trust that you'll figure it out. I think he meant you'll figure it out before you go, maybe. But I was like, yeah, you're right. Like I'll totally figure it out. It's not a big deal. That's just, that's how I am. Like that's how I've gotten where I am today with all of the marketing stuff is like, I just go dabble and I figure it out. But
hey, Jeff, Ruth has a pro tip for you. And I think we need to put it up here. 100%. You should be your listing appointments.
Well, it's funny because a lot of people know me. I just side story, like I've been this whiskey guy. So in my background of SEO and websites and all that marketing, I ran one of the biggest whiskey websites in the world, and it's still out there today. I'm not involved with it anymore, but a lot of the people that know me personally and that know me through Facebook and all my connections, I'm a whiskey guy to them. And people call me all the time asking for tips and advice, and so when I go to listing appointments and when I go to meet with friends, they're always like, do you want some whiskey? Like they offer me whiskey. Like, what can I give you? Get you some whiskey? And I'm like, no, we shouldn't drink while we're signing contracts. That's bad.
But the second you sign, yes.
Yeah. Or we are celebrating. We are celebrating when I sell the house. Like and that's the thing. My closing gifts, a lot of times, depending on which friend it is, and I give little baskets of whiskey or an old fashioned mixer. Basket with an orange and some glassware and that kind of stuff. So nice. It's pretty fun to put that kind of stuff together too.
Well, now I'm starting to understand why Ricardo and Jeff are such good friends. or maybe there's a dependency relationship there by Ricardo.
Exactly.
Yes, yeah.
Somebody called that up.
Oh, somebody already called it. That's funny. That's exactly what popped into my head.
Well, and it's funny when I got into this, I was like, I need to create, and this was where, and I've kind of gone back and forth on this, and everybody has their own opinion on it, but like I wanted to create kind of my own personal brand, if you will. I have the Real PDX thing, and that's kind of the overall brand that I use, but I wanted my own personal brand, which is like, how do I mix what I have passion for, which is like real estate, helping people, and whiskey. And I even put it out on Facebook, like, hey guys, I'm looking to figure that out and like make that work. And I got all these crazy ideas, and really at the end of the day, I was like, you know what, that's not really what I want to be known for per se. But I saw Ricardo's bio, and I think one of you guys wrote it.
Dustin wrote it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like the thing with the old fashioned, it's so goddamn good. and for me, I was like, I was so jealous of that because even though I'm the biggest like tech nerd and I have all these platforms and all this stuff with the automation and all that, at the end of the day, real estate is an old fashioned, like you got to get belly to belly and do things old fashioned. And when I read that, I was like, God, that was it. Like, that's how I can't steal it from Ricardo now, but
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can.
Well, what's so funny is because we said we need to do bios, and then Dustin just went on this tirade and wrote the most scathingly accurate bios for all of us. And I think he thought it was a joke, but we read them and we were like, I would change a thing. Publish that. That is hilarious.
It was when I read that, I was like, "Damn, that's good."
That's 10 years of being an escrow and becoming super burned and cynical.
What's
So really,
hilarious?
so-
What's hilarious is I literally read it and said, "Holy shit!
Yeah.
Read this. This is so good."
I had hired a coach. So in the transition between the team I'm on now and the last team I was on, I was looking for, like I said, I don't want to make the other team sound bad. It's a husband-wife team. I've known them forever. I love them. But really, I needed that like next level of mentorship in the sense of, just the transactional stuff, but more like the day-to-day time blocking and that kind of stuff. And so I listened to a podcast, it's another one out in the real estate world. And he had mentioned a coach. So I got on that guy's podcast, listened to some of his stuff. And I was like, man, this guy's pretty good. He offers a little bit of a coaching program. So I started paying him. And through some of the stuff that he offers, what he recommends is like becoming a matchmaker. And I have this like unique background, again, with some of the website and SEO stuff that I've done over the years, where at one point I was beta testing all of the UX and UI experiences for a lot of the dating apps before they came out. And I've always had this thing, like there's a parallel between any sort of sales, not just real estate, but like car sales, real estate sales, whatever it may be, and the dating world. There's a massive connection there. And I always used to joke back in the day, like with all these dating apps I was testing, I was like, man, somebody should build a real estate app like this, where you're swiping left and right and it's picking up, the type of houses you like, the locations you're liking, and it eventually narrows that down. Like that was actually built at one point. Greg Fisher's team, I forget the name that they called it, but anyway, they built something similar, but then it got bought and it got shelved. And I was always like, dude, that was the greatest thing. Like that could have been, it was before Redfin, before all these apps and all that. But
that was pretty awesome, actually.
That was super sweet. But really, when this coach mentioned, he's like, you're a matchmaker for real estate. Like you've got a buyer that's looking for a property. You've got a property that's looking for a buyer. Your job is to make that happen. And that really goes to something I actually just posted about it on Facebook a couple of days ago. And it started a little bit of a dialogue between some of my agent friends. But I've been trying to like limit the amount of conversations that all my realtor friends from back in the day, like my goal now is to put content out for my clients, my consumer clients. But every once in a while I'll put something out and my agent friends will chime in and they'll disagree with me and I've had a few times where I've had to delete some comments and just be like, man, like knock it off.
You're like, this is an active rain. This is my website. Leave me alone.
Yeah, well, this is
wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. But it was basically my statement was my job as a real estate agent is not to sell your house. The house is going to sell itself to the right person that comes along at the right time. The flyers that I do, the marketing that I do, the video that I do, like none of that crap. And I take this with a grain of salt. None of that is going to sell your house. It's going to help. It's going to get people's eyeballs on it. But my job as the agent is to do stuff like that and get your house seen by as many people as possible, because the right person at the right time is going to come along and they're going to be the one that buys it. So I'm not the one that actually sells the house. The house sells itself.
And there's that, the other thing I would want to add in there is people always, they talk about what their home's value is. And we know that your home is worth what somebody is willing to pay for it.
Yeah.
Right. And appraisal is kind of an assessment by a bank. So that's actually a really cool approach. It's like my job is to find the buyer that this is their dream home and then give them that opportunity to do what they need to do in order to get it.
And so
that's really brilliant.
Some of the stuff that I do whenever I take a listing, just not to say it's above and beyond, like there's a bunch of other agents that do this, but I like to say I do it a little better because of my skill set and my background. And it's probably just easier for me. Not to say I do it any better. I can do it faster because I've been doing this forever, like 15 years now. And so, I get a new listing. Like I went, and there are tools where you can see, like in Portland, you can see where people are coming into Portland from. So there's, Redfin has its like a migration tool or whatever it's called. Like I can go all these places and figure out where in other states the bulk of the people are coming from. And then I'll run Facebook ads targeting those people, for every new listing I get. And I target, Seattle, San Diego, San Francisco, LA, Orange County area. Those are the main areas that I target for every new listing. And I tell my people when I take a listing, I'm like, look, I will get your property in front of way more people than most other agents will. I do stuff like that. I do stuff with YouTube. I run ads behind the scenes on YouTube videos and different things like that. But that to me is just one of the things that differentiates. And that's the cool like tech side of crap. I've got the old school stuff where I get in front of them, we talk, we make sure everything's cool there. And then I kind of break out the techie stuff and I'm like, look, I'm going to get nerdy on you for a second here. This is the stuff that I'm going to do above and beyond what most agents in my market are doing. And I know because I've been coaching a lot of them for the last 10 years. So here's what I'm going to do. And most people are
but with that knowledge, I'm sure comes a whole other level of confidence.
Yeah.
That a lot of other people wouldn't have.
Yeah. And it's funny because I don't have a listing presentation. Like my listing presentation, I don't
even after that first one. You don't like what?
No. And this, I don't want to sound like egotistical or anything like that, but the only listing that I've ever lost out on was that very first one that I went on where I had no clue what I was doing as far as the contract stuff. Like that's, and like I said, I don't ever want that to happen again. So I've got the contract stuff down now. I can do that, whenever, wherever. But when I go in there, like I just ask questions. Like, what did you feel like when you bought this house? Because that's going to tell me for this house specifically, the type of person that I'm going to try and go find to matchmake to buy this house. So tell me a little bit about what your life was like when you first bought this house, what you were doing when you bought this place, how you were feeling, because that's the, like the persona that I'm trying to build in my head that I can go out and target and bring those eyeballs in.
Do demographic targeting through your digital media.
People are like, man, you don't have like a flyer or like a brochure or like a bunch of shit to give me that tells me how awesome you are with your marketing. And I'm like, I do.
I'll go ask somebody from my office if you want some.
Yeah, I mean, we have all of that stuff, but and that's usually when I'm like, here, I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I don't need to give you like the glossy brochures. I mean, I have them, and I always have one with me because inevitably there's one person that like wants to see that stuff. Like, here's the type of marketing that I'm going to do when I do these glossy brochures and the postcards and all of the other stuff. Like, that's all happening automatically, but again, above and beyond that, here's what I'm going to go do in the digital world to get as many eyeballs on this property as possible.
So you've given us a sense of what you would coach on and what has worked. I'm curious to know, let's take a little detour here. What did you coach people to do that when you tried to do it yourself as an actual agent, it didn't work as well, and maybe you put it to the side? And let's not just put you on the hot seat. Other people, like something that was common in the coaching world that, you and other coaches regularly instruct agents on, that when you actually tried to apply it yourself as an agent, you're like, oh man, this doesn't quite work as advertised.
Yeah, I have the perfect answer for that because it's something that I beat myself up on quite a bit. For as much as I've been coaching people to like how to generate leads through Facebook ads, use your CRM, set up the automations to do all the follow-ups. Like that was one of the very first things that I did. I went and built my systems out, the first week. I've got a drip campaign for Facebook leads. I've got a drip campaign for my Google PPC leads. I built all of that stuff out. We all know that it takes time to nurture those. So, I built out a 30-day, a 60-day, a 90-day, and all of that stuff. And back in the day when I used to coach the agents, I would always say like, hey, we build all of this stuff out, but man, like you got to call these people. You got to stay in touch with them. You can't just like set it and forget it. I am the epitome right now of the set it and forget it guy. And I know I'm pretty busy considering in my mind, like I really started this in April. I'll take my 8th listing this next week. We'll go live with that. And then I've closed like 5 buyers as of next week too.
Wow.
And so, that's not astronomical numbers by any means. There's, hundreds of people doing better, but like, it's all right. I mean, I think so at least, but I know I could be doing so much more if I was more strict with myself and followed my own advice of like getting up every morning and going into my database and actively working that database. Like the automations are there and it's awesome. And I've set them up to where they're about as human as they can be. So when people, like I get text messages and phone calls and emails every day from people. So I'm not saying it's not working. I just don't put as much effort into it as I know I should be. And that's what I used to harp on my clients about. And now I am totally one of them.
Well, let me ask you this, Jeff. So I'm thinking two things when you're saying that. The first one is maybe it's not necessary because we as consumers don't necessarily want people to call us. We've got the information. You're sending it to them at a frequent enough cadence that they know who you are and they're staying in touch. And then the other part of that, so there's that question. And then the other part of that is, maybe it doesn't have to be you. If you still think that it's necessary, it goes back to what your first two experiences were with those other teams. Those teams were fine for people that were comfortable working in those types of structures. So I guess, are you okay with set it and forget it? Or would you consider hiring somebody like as an assistant, a virtual assistant, to just call through your things on a regular basis?
An ISA, whatever.
Yeah. Where do you think you would land on that?
I will go back to the old fashioned bio. Like I'm, again, as techie as it gets, but I like to do business the old fashioned way. So to me, just my opinion, like if I'm me and I've got all these leads and I hire somebody else to call all those leads, and those leads have come in, and I don't even like the term leads, like that's a whole nother conversation, but these are people that have responded to something that I put out there, whether it's a Facebook ad, and none of my Facebook ads are like the generic, they're all, well, I say one of them is my like long-term evergreen content. And it brings in a couple a day, but really it's other types of content that I've put out that has brought these people in, and they're there for my personality. And even all of my drip campaigns, like I wrote all of them from scratch. And so there's nothing generic about it. I use memes on the emails, I make jokes. It's very, very, very personal. So to me, having Ricardo call those leads, like that would be weird.
I don't know.
Well, I mean, I would do it more along the lines of, hey, Jeff wanted me to reach out to see if you needed anything. And just so that you're not making the physical act of doing the calls, because quite frankly, you should be working on $1,000 an hour work.
Yep.
And that's a $10 or $15 an hour kind of job. And they're just making introductions. They're not.
Yep. And I like that. Like once I get to that level, that's kind of, I don't want to say my goal, but not to contradict what I just said, but like it would be great to have somebody to do that, because I know there's transactions in there. And that's what I used to harp on my clients. Like I know, again, back to that, I'd ask them all these questions. How many people are in your database? How often do you go through that? How blah, 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 blah. And if somebody's like, I've got, 500 people in a database that aren't just random ass people. These are like, not necessarily friends, but they're people that I've interacted with. They get my daily market or the new listings and that. And then every week we send out a market piece with like our new listings as our team, and then some blog posts that we write. So like they're getting stuff from me twice a week. Like they know who I am. Eventually I want to get to a point where I can either take the time to do that or have somebody else doing it on my behalf and figure out a way. Because there is a way, like you just kind of nailed it right there. Is like have somebody call that says, hey, Jeff wanted me to call and reach out, or Jeff's doing an event this week, or whatever it may be. Like there's a way to do that. Yeah. To me, just a lot of the teams and what I see in Portland is they have 4 or 5 people on their team that are just dialing all day long. And, like 3 days later, they're calling the same people. And it's just like that just is dirty to me.
Yeah.
But again, that's just me. I don't know. it works. Like they're doing a ton of business from it. So there's something to it, but it's just not how I want to operate and do my business.
Yeah. Again, I love this whole, I love the part of this conversation where you kind of have constructed your own way of doing business around your skill set and your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. But it's not that you didn't take yourself outside of your comfort zone, but you really ended up settling into your comfort zone, and using your other skills and your other experiences. But I mean, I just think that's so important. Like I think Ricardo said earlier, there is no one way and there is no right way. It just doing it every day, getting up and doing it and figuring it out and making it something that you're excited to get up in the morning and take another step in this journey.
Yep.
Right? I mean,
and there will become a time where I get better, like the time blocking. I mean, I live and die by my calendar, but I need to get better at doing the time blocking in the morning activities of like, I should be getting up every morning, going and doing my workout, coming back and take an hour at the bare minimum and work on my database. And even if it's just to respond to emails or to reach out to people that I can see when somebody clicks on the same listing 4 or 5 times. Like my system sends me an email that says, so-and-so clicked on this listing 4 times. I should probably reach out to that person and be like, hey, you know what? I was thinking about you. There's a listing that came up that I thought you should check out. What do you think? And they're going to be like, oh my God, I was totally looking at that one 4 times already.
It's funny. You should ask.
but also consumers are a little smarter. Like they know we have the technology that does that and that kind of stuff. But I think you can still do that and for me personally, like I do it in a joking manner in the sense like everything is a joke to me. Where like that sounds bad. As I was saying that, I was like, not everything is a joke. But like doing it in a joking manner where it's like, hey, I'm not stalking you, but I can see that you've clicked on this listing 4 times. What about this listing is attractive to you? Would you like to go see it? That's what I should be doing every damn morning. Mm-hmm. And I'm not.
Yeah.
And then send a GIF of somebody peeking around the corner.
So I have one for that. It's a cat. It's a meme. It's like the ceiling, and there's a hole cut out of the sheetrock, and a little kitten like peeking through it. So I mean, like I said, I'm serious. I have emails for all of these things, and when people get them, they're like, they like, I don't know my response rate, but it's got to be 75-80% on those things because it's so different.
And the great thing about this is because we talk about content marketing all the time, and when you are your genuine self, you're building real relationships based on who you are. So you're attracting people that have that crazy sense of humor, that think that that's the most hilarious thing. I don't know if he knows anything about real estate, but that guy's hilarious. I want to talk to him.
Yep.
And I want to work with him.
Yeah, I want to work with him because you are being who you are. Mm-hmm. And I love that. I love that. Even if it's memes and a series of emails and texts, I just love that. People are they're gonna talk to you and they're gonna be like, yeah, that's totally the guy that created all those emails and texts.
Right. Yeah. And that's where people I used to coach with and train with, like they would say, well, can you just help me? Can you like you're so good at copywriting? Can you just write these for me? And I'm like, well, I could, but then it doesn't match your personality. Like it's way better if you do it. Yeah. And this was just a big, huge frustration of mine was like most of the people that I work with and coached wouldn't do it. They would just be like, that's either they would think I can't do that. I can't do that like you do, or that's a lot of work. Like, I don't want to do that.
So I want to come back around to something here because this is a fun conversation, but I'm really dialed in right now on the fact that you coach people to do follow-up calls and you don't do them yourself for the reasons you gave, right? But I wonder, is it maybe the case that a hidden reason is because you feel like it's just not as good a use of your time as you first thought? In other words, it's like I feel. Let me put it to you in this way: if you could actually generate, say, $40,000 in commissions in the next 2 months by making phone calls, you would make phone calls, I assume. So why
Why am I not? That's the question. That's what I used to always say. Like, that's the damn $1 million question, right?
So is it actually kind of a myth that there's a whole lot more gold in that list than if you were to make the phone calls? Like, do you just feel, and having experience now, that that's a bit of a myth?
I don't think it's a myth. I still believe that wholeheartedly. I think we just get to a point where either we've got enough business that we're comfortable, and that's probably about like I'm doing two things right now. I've got enough business where I'm like, dude, I don't know if I could handle much more, and also making enough money where I'm pretty comfortable. So I'm kind of like, seems like I'm at that level, right? If all my business dried up today, like if everything closed today,
and you needed to make money tomorrow,
I'd be on that damn phone tomorrow.
Yeah, that's what I was getting, Dustin, is I think that cold calling is still a highly effective way to have conversations about real estate. He just figured out a way to do it he figured out a different way to do it. And until those conversations stop or slow down, you only have so much bandwidth. And, we did, I was on a podcast earlier. We talk about using video in marketing, mortgage marketing. And one of the gentlemen, Alan Christian, who was actually on our podcast, he's like, I have to purposely not put content out there anymore because I have a scale problem now. I've created so much content and so many automated systems that I'm having trouble dealing with the opportunities. And I actually had to tap the brakes a little bit. And that's what happens when you're producing content and you build systems, because those things work whether you get up in the morning and go to the gym or do whatever. Those systems are still out there plugging away. And I love that. I mean, I think that's where everybody's goal should be.
It goes to where my goal for this first year really was to, I mean, I had a number goal, obviously, like I want to do 12 transactions. I will hit that when I go through all of these listings. So that, I'm on track for that. But really my goal for the first year was to like do 12 transactions, help 12 families buy or sell, and then get my systems all dialed in and get the stuff coming in so that next year, and this is the beauty of EXP, and like I'm not into the recruiting and all that crap as much as some of these other people are, but going into next year, I want to bring on 3 or 4 other awesome agents on a team with me, so that I can kind of share my knowledge and share my systems. And really have like a couple dedicated buyer's agents, a couple dedicated people to handle listings, and then me kind of as and I hate using the term rainmaker because that's almost like a Keller Williams thing. I think they kind of coined that back in the day, but just to build a small little team, like I don't want to go do 500 transactions. That seems like way too much stress and trouble and all that crap. But if I have like 4 or 5 people and we can do 36, 40, 50, whatever it ends up being, like that's a pretty damn good life for all of us. If we all have these systems dialed in and we're not spending a ridiculous amount of money to do that. And so that's kind of my next year goal.
Okay. So we talked about some things that you got in, you coach people, it didn't work. Now I'm really curious to hear, and we've heard some things that do work. I'm curious to hear something that you coach people on that worked way better than you thought it was going to. You put it to task, you're like, this should work. And then it's like,
and if you follow me on Facebook, which I know like Scott and Ricardo have, but storytelling is a big thing for me. Like I'm actually part of a community where we're a bunch of copywriters and we tell stories. And really, I won't go too deep into it, but the gist of it is I'm in control of building a character for my story. And if I can tell that story, and kind of have its own twists and pivots and plot twists and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, everything revolves around building a character that I want you guys to see as an awesome real estate agent. So every story that I tell, every little snippet that I put out as far as video content or written posts on Facebook or a marketing post on my blog.
A simple status update.
Yep. That all revolves around the story that I want to be known for. I've done it before with my whiskey stuff. Now I'm doing it with my real estate stuff. So really what I was trying to get people to realize before I got into this was I was doing these story things back when I was with the title and escrow company and doing it and using it to grow kind of my coaching and my my training and all that stuff. But I was like, look, like this can work for anything. You just have to create the character that you want to be. And there's two characters in every story. There's our lesser self, which is the little devil on our shoulder. And then there's the other guy who's like the awesome guy, right? And so the devil's always like, nah, you shouldn't make those phone calls. Like you should sleep in today.
Who do you think you are? You've only been in the business for 6 months.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a real thing. Like that little
Absolutely
voice in your head is it's real. And so this community that I belong to, it's called the Story Athlete, and kind of the initial part of that is getting us to kick that guy's ass so that he doesn't have a say. He doesn't get to write my story. He's going to chirp at me all the time, but I get to tell that guy to shut up. And now I'm going to go write my story and do it the way I want to do it and the way that I want people to see me. And as a real estate, like when I was coaching people, I would always tell people like, hey, there's an art to this. It's not easy, but you can do it in short form or long form. And honestly, the long form stuff that I write gets way more engagement and responses, and not necessarily publicly. This is what I love about this is like, I can write a big, huge, long Facebook post, and on the post itself, I get 10, 20, 50 likes, whatever, and I might get some comments. But behind the scenes, the messages that I'm getting and the business that I get from it, that's magical to me. And I'm trying to tell people that, but some people just can't wrap their brains around it.
Isn't that Ryan Fletcher's stuff? Story Athlete?
Yep.
Yeah, he's really amazing. I've really enjoyed seeing what he's done with that whole concept.
Yeah, so I started that.
Really evolved it. Yeah.
2018, like right after I was out of the business for a bit, I opened up a big private whiskey bar. I had to shut it down for a bunch of reasons, and I was in a really like, I won't call it like a dark space in my head, but really at the end of the day, that's what it was. Like I was like, I don't want to get back into title and escrow. I don't want to get back into real estate. This was like, I lost a ridiculous amount of money. I was in a bad spot, and I knew that I needed something to get me out of this. And I started buying courses on all of these things. But Ryan, I had Ryan's book from a long time ago, and he lives up in Vancouver, just north of me by about 20 minutes. And he reached out and said, Mike, I'm starting this new thing. I think it'd be great for you. You should check it out. And I looked and I was like, sounds cool. And it's evolved. It's different now. Like they give us a daily workout that we have to do. And then we have to go write about a topic that they give us. And each one of those topics needs to revolve around 4 pillars. And it's mind, body, business, and relationships. And if you get your mind right, the rest kind of fall in line. Your body falls in line because your mind controls what, I am telling myself, get your ass out of bed and go do your damn workout. I'm telling this guy to shut up. And then when you get that going, magically your business starts doing better. Your relationships are better. Like it's a super cool thing.
So it's like you flipped the switch when you started writing on Facebook.
Yeah. And that long form stuff. And in the beginning, when I was writing a lot more like personal stuff of like, here's what I was feeling when I had to shut my bar down and I lost friends and I had like these suicidal thoughts, and not to go too dark on us, but like what I found was other people started reaching out behind the scenes, and they were like, oh my God, thank you so much for writing this. I felt the same way, or I'm going through something similar. And like the connections that I've made from that have been worth gold. I mean, literally gold.
Well, that vulnerability is just so genuine.
Yeah.
Right?
So to loop this back around to answer your question, really was like the advice that I used to always give everybody was like, let your daily activities become your marketing. Even if it's as simple as like, on Tuesday tour days, you're going out and looking at properties and you see something cool in a house, like take a picture of it and write a little thing about it. Hey, this is a cool refrigerator handle, like whatever it may be. It shows people that you're out doing stuff. It shows them you're interested in whatever, but really like you can go so above and beyond real estate with that, just on a personal level, on a hobby level. Like, I can talk about whatever hobbies I'm doing or that I'm out doing, like anything you're passionate about, you're going to attract those people. And then as long as you weave in some real estate stuff, like it's not rocket science to me, but.
So, this, I do think this kind of pivots into something that you kind of said earlier that is something that I've really been focusing on for a long time, and that's calling what we do leads, right? And And I think that discounts the fact that there are families out there that are responding and reacting to messages and that they're interested. But as an industry, we always talk to them about like they're a number, right? Mm-hmm. The word leads. And when you said that, I have been personally trying to completely remove that word from all of my narrative, all of my dialogue, because that's not what they are. They're families that they're.
I say connections.
And their families. So I would love for you to talk a little bit of just explain that a little bit. And you just said you called them questions, but kind of how did you come to that, and how has that impacted the way that you do your business?
The one thing that's had like probably the biggest lasting effect on this specifically was I at the time was at 1000 Watt Consulting when, I don't know if you guys remember it, but they put out a video that kind of went viral in our little industry, at least, that was like, I am not a lead. And they went and interviewed a bunch of people that had recently bought houses, and they basically got them all to say, I'm so-and-so, I bought a house, I'm not a lead. And they did that over and over and over. And it was pretty powerful to watch.
Oh, wow.
The problem is in our industry, when we're talking to each other, just as far as jargon goes, like we all just say leads because we all instantly know what that means. If I was like, yeah, hey, I was going through my CRM talking to all my connections today, like that, we get it, that makes sense, but you kind of have to go like, oh, that's weird. But when I'm talking to my consumers and my clients and, they're asking questions about what I do or how I do it, I don't use the term leads with them for sure. And I always say like, I love making connections outside of my world. And I do that with my Facebook ads and my Google ads and my YouTube stuff. And, any of the content that I'm putting out there, the reason that I do that is to get more connections from people that may be looking to buy or sell eventually. I've met some awesome friends just from putting stuff out into the world. And they're like, hey, I'm not even trying to buy a house or sell a house. Like, this is just funny or awesome or whatever.
Yeah.
We should be friends. So in my mind there, I'm just making connections, and the more connections I can make, it's a numbers game at that point to get back into the marketing stuff. Like if I make 500 connections a year, 500 leads a year, whatever you want to call it, like those are people that, there's a certain percentage of them that are going to buy and sell. And so right. I just think it's dirty. And that term of, especially if you're talking directly to them, like I don't talk to any of my people and say, hey, thanks for becoming a lead.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think it's a bad idea to try to eliminate that word from your lexicon. I mean, that's something that a lot of professionals do, is they kind of bring industry jargon into conversations, but it's one of those things, and this from probably Fletcher in your mind and body. If your mind in the office is thinking about these things as leads, it impacts the way that you communicate, and it impacts the way that you feel about attempting to have conversations and make connections with people.
Yeah. So we actually get Zillow leads, for lack of better words. But one of the things that I've mentioned a few times is like we're getting Zillow connections. And really, if you are familiar with how the Zillow system works, like my phone rings and it's Zillow calling me. And if I answer that call, they're connecting me to a consumer that's on the phone or has just gotten off, or they're making an introduction.
It's an introduction.
It's an introduction to somebody who's looking to buy a home. And so it's the same thing. Like, again, you just nailed it where you said like inner office jargon or inner industry jargon. If we could get that to go away, then we'd be golden. Problem is we've been saying that for 30 years now or whatever, and hard habits.
I blame the vendors.
Yeah, because everybody calls me and says, do you need more leads? And I'm like, no, not at all. I would love to have more connections, but I don't need more leads. And you mentioned a guy that has kind of throttled, and I've had to do that a little bit myself. I've turned some of my Facebook stuff off because I've just noticed that for my sanity level and the lifestyle that I want to live, to be fair to the consumers that are reaching out or trying to connect with me or whatever, it wouldn't be good to have a bunch of people filling in my CRM and my database and all that and not having contact from me and not hearing from me. And so I throttle back, but there's going to be a time when I build that little team that I'm talking about where I can flip all of these switches on, and it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun
That's the beautiful thing about systems. You can turn them on and off. You can throttle them up and down, and it doesn't require reinventing the wheel.
So it just goes back to me proving to myself, and the point of this whole damn podcast, I think, was like, I had to go prove that I know what I'm talking about to myself and to some other people. And I mean, I've done that in my mind. I'm like, hey, this seems to work. Not to say it's going to work for everybody else. Like, Ricardo probably couldn't go write a story like I'm talking about it just might not work for him. Like, it's not his style. So you have to find your own way of doing this. And there's a lot of ways to do it, but.
Well, I think all of your past coaching clients have a huge sigh of relief that you did know what you were talking about now.
I had some good clients that listened to most of my advice, and I mean, that's why they were my clients still. Like they were like, Jeff knows his stuff. I had several that when I got licensed, they were like, oh, great. Like,
I'm retiring. Forget it.
It wasn't even like. Several of them reached out and said, why didn't you call me? Why didn't you come on my team? Like, I would love to have you. And I'm like, because I'm not the marketing guy right now. Like, I don't want to be that guy. I just want to go do real estate. And they were like, no, I get it. They wanted me on their team for whatever reason. But several of them I could tell were like, man, I could have had Jeff on my team. Like, that would have been great to have somebody with that skill set to help us with all of these things. And I'm like, no, that's not
what I want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So Jeff, for people who are watching this video and would like to become a connection of yours, where can they find you?
I'm on Facebook. Obviously, I'm on Instagram. Just my name, Jeff Bernheisel. It's funny. I have a little counter thing. I'm watching my my YouTube channel grow. Like, I've got 2 new subscribers. Just could be a coincidence. I don't know.
It's our vast audience for sure.
But I don't want other agents connecting with me on YouTube because that messes up my algorithm stuff that I do. But on Facebook for sure, I connect with pretty much anybody that's in the industry. Just my name, The Real Jeff B, is my tag on Instagram, I believe. I am on Twitter, but I don't really use that much for real estate stuff. That's mostly for just following my stock tip guys. Yeah. Awesome.
And you have a YouTube page, like you said. So if people want to go see the kind of videos you're making, that stuff's there. I actually went and checked that out. You got a handful of videos. It looks like you're doing about 1 a month right now.
Yeah. So the video thing I don't know if we're good on time or whatever, but I can go off on the YouTube thing for a minute because
if you got a minute, if you want to go off of the YouTube.
One of the guys that I coached is with EXP, and they went out and did like 227 videos over the last year. I mean, they're getting a ridiculous amount of subscribers and comments and a little bit of business from it. I just went through and I was like, great, now I have to compete with somebody who actually took my advice and went and put the work in, like, to the next level. And I'm just like, in my mind, I'm like, fuck, how am I going to compete with that? I just went to his channel, like, sorted it all by volume of views. And I was like, here's the 10 videos that I need to do.
Oh, smart.
And really, I just did, I think, like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And I get calls, emails, and texts from those 6 videos. I mean, and we're going to do another one today. So I'm trying to do, in my mind, I was like, I would love to do 1 a week. Like that's way harder than I thought it was going to be. 1 a month now is about my cadence, I think, is where I'm falling into. But man, like the business, the stuff that you get, the people reaching out just from doing very, very, very specific videos. And so I just sorted it by volume. I was like, here's the 10 that I need to do. And really, I think there's only 6 that I've done so far. I'm getting business from that now. So it doesn't take long. It's not even great content. I mean, it's just me yapping.
That's awesome. And the name of your real estate brokerage?
So it's Hillshire Realty Group is our team. And we're with EXP. EXP is the overarching thing, but Hillshire, a buddy of mine's running it for years. I actually went to him last week and I was like, hey man, what's the deal with our name? Like, where's this brand come from? Like, it's got to be a thing, right? And I was expecting him to say like, oh, it's the town I grew up in, or have some like awesome story around it. And he goes, nah, I run a lot and it's a street that I run on. But I thought it sounded kind of classy. I was able to build a brand around it. Like, I think it looks nice. The brand is nice. All of our stuff is.
It sounds like a summer sausage.
Kind of, yeah.
Hillshire Farms, right?
That's awesome. That's so good. Well, it's been a real pleasure. Ricardo, where can people find you in your awesome bio?
RicardoBueno.com. Written by the one and only Dustin Stevie, who
I
is
actually
a copywriting genius.
I appreciate that. I actually went to your page to check it out.
It's not there.
It's not there. You should probably update some other things on that page, but we can talk about that later. So yeah, RicardoBueno.com. You can sign up for Ricardo's newsletter. He puts out some really great tidbits of information about how to do marketing better, faster, smarter. So go check that out. Authority newsletter is his newsletter, RicardoBueno.com. And then Scott Shang over at Find My Way Home. If you're looking for a better way to get a home loan and you don't want to deal with some guy in a call center selling a big box solution, Scott's the guy to go talk to. So Scott Shang, Find My Way Home. I'm Dustin Stevie with Lighthouse Escrow. If you're watching this on YouTube, we would really appreciate it if you like this video. Give the algorithm a little bit of love so that we can get promoted, and subscribe to our channel. We're trying to build our subscriber base there and get the word out about a lot of the marketing tips that we're doing, have the world meet people like Jeff. So like and subscribe. If you're on Facebook, you can follow us on Facebook. We got a Facebook group there. And if you want to check out past episodes where we talk about things like how to do video content marketing, right? We've talked to a number of people about that. Jeff just dropped that little nugget in there. It's obviously something that we could probably talk a lot more about. Marketingtrench.fm is where you can see our previous episodes where we dive into topics such as video marketing and many, many others. Jeff, it's been a pleasure, guys. Until next
thank you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, this has been the Marketing